début des années 30, mon père et Otto étaient des pacifistes convaincus.
L'Allemagne veut la paix.
Je crois qu'il faut maintenir le dialogue avec Hitler.
Si on veut qu'elle puisse tout nous dire, faut qu'on ait l'air capable de tout entendre.
Et puis quand ça marche pas, on va se bourrer la gueule.
Et du coup, vous faites quoi ce soir?
C'est dans ma tête, c'est dans ma tête. C'est dans ma tête.
Hello and welcome to Arts 24. It's time for our weekly dive into French cinema, and for that I'm joined by our film critic Manon Kerjean. Hi Manon. Well, we'll begin with a major new French release, Les Rayons et les Ombres, or Rays and Shadows. This is the latest film by Xavier Giannoli after the international success of Lost Illusions. The director returns with this ambitious historical drama set during the Nazi occupation of France, and the film is more than 3 hours long. Manon, what stayed with you the most?
Yes, 3 hours and 15 minutes, so maybe bring a coffee for this one.
Okay.
But honestly, it's one of those rare films where you don't really see the time passing. And what struck me is also how haunting the film is. You keep thinking about it for days after you've seen it. And it's inspired by the real story of journalist Jean Luchaire, played by Jean Dujardin, and his daughter, actress Corinne Luchaire, played by Nastia Golubeva, and both were caught in the spiral of collaboration during World War II. Let's have a look and hear from Xavier Giannoli.
Plus jamais ça. Car la guerre ne résout rien. À la table là, il y a ma petite fille Corinne. Elle ne grandira pas dans une Europe déchirée par les conflits armés entre les peuples.
Je voudrais raconter comment on en est arrivé là. Au début des années 30, mon père et Otto étaient des pacifistes convaincus.
L'Allemagne veut la paix.
Je crois qu'il faut maintenir le dialogue avec Hitler.
Désormais, il y a un homme à l'ambassade d'Allemagne qui est mon ami depuis toujours. Et son idée, c'est une politique de collaboration sincère entre les deux pays.
Qu'est-ce que tu veux dire par collaboration?
Victor Hugo, whose poem the film title is a reference to, says, "To blame everything is to understand nothing. And to understand someone is not to forgive them. But if you don't understand your history, you are doomed to relive it." And I like to see that in the film, I was interested in taking that risk, in getting as close as possible to that danger, in seeing how people end up dealing with the worst. Rien de prédestiné à ça finissent par pactiser avec le pire.
So there's some amazing 1930s, 1940s period detail in that film. Is this just a historical reconstruction?
No, what Giannoli really explores is how that moral slide happens. And Jean Dujardin's acting is very subtle. At the beginning of the film, he plays a convinced pacifist who believes that dialogue with Germany might preserve peace in Europe. But step by step, that conviction eventually leads into collaboration.
Okay, so I guess that's where the title Rays and Shadows comes from, that duality.
Exactly. The title comes from Victor Hugo, and it perfectly reflects the film's structure. The rays are the glamour of Parisian high society, the cinema world, the illusion of influence and power. But gradually, the shadows take over with the violence of occupation. And what's fascinating is how Giannoli plays with these two sides on screen, through the lighting, for example. But he never simplifies his characters. He shows their blindness and their cowardice, but also their humanity.
Sounds like a very nuanced look at that period of history. Well, next to a film that plays with suspense, romance, and cinema itself, this is Le Crime du Troisième Étage, or Murder in the Building. It's a playful mystery starring Laetitia Casta and Gilles Lelouch, we see on the poster there. What's the story here?
So we follow Colette, a film professor who specializes in Hitchcock, and she becomes convinced that her new neighbor has murdered his wife. The twist is we're never quite sure whether there's really a crime. But as clues start piling up, what begins as paranoia slowly turns into a widely entertaining investigation and a romantic reconnection with her husband, François. Here is a glimpse.
C'est votre voisin du 3e étage. Il m'a demandé de distribuer des invitations pour venir le voir jouer dans sa pièce ce soir. Tenez.
On ne passe. Ça me l'aide en plus. Ça va bien durer au moins 2 heures, ça.
3h45.
Sur quoi?
Eh ben oui, c'est marqué là, j'avais pas vu.
Oh, la soirée, le pire. Et vous, ça vous a plu? J'ai été transporté.
Si ça vous a pas plu, taisez-vous à jamais. je plaisante. Bonne soirée.
Je suis sûre qu'il s'est passé quelque chose de grave. Je pense vraiment qu'il a tué sa femme.
C'est un petit côté fenêtre sur cour, hein, quand même, cet immeuble.
Il faut qu'on fasse éclater la vérité au grand jour.
Oh, putain!
J'ai une mission pour toi.
Some familiar scenes there, I think. So this isn't just a thriller, right?
No, the director Rémi Besançon describes it as a triple-layered comedy.
Okay.
So it's a detective story, a romantic revival, and a declaration of love to cinema. So the investigation here is almost a pretext. The real question is whether Colette and François can fall in love again. And what's clever is how the film constantly blurs the lines between fiction and reality. It's very much a tribute to Rear Window, with this idea of voyeurism. And there are also playful nods to other Hitchcock films, like the shower scene from Psycho.
Okay, we saw in the trailer. Yeah. What about the performances, though? Did they win you over?
Well, they're clearly having fun.
Okay.
Laetitia Casta feels almost like a Annie Hall figure wandering into a Hitchcock thriller. Gilles Lelouch brings a lot of self-irony to François. And then there's Guillaume Gallienne as the suspicious neighbor, deliciously theatrical, which comes as no surprise since he's a member of a prestigious Comédie Française, France's national theater company. That said, I personally found parts of it a little overplayed and old-fashioned at times, as if the film was leaning a bit too heavily on its theatricality.
Okay, for fans of sort of camp mystery. Then. Okay, next to something quite different, we're looking at La Maison des Femmes, a unique centre in the Paris suburb of Seine-Saint-Denis, dedicated to supporting women who've survived violence of different sorts. The film tells the story of the team working there. Let's take a look.
La Maison des Femmes, bonjour. C'est Amina, c'est ça? C'est un espace pour elle, pour qu'elle puisse penser à autre chose.
Et là, on donne tout. 3, 2, 1.
Notre structure est menacée de fermeture à moyen terme. Et elles font quoi, du coup, les patientes, sinon on ferme? Il faut qu'on devienne inévitable. On va pas se laisser faire, croyez-moi.
Mon mari est quelqu'un de formidable, mais il finira par me tuer.
Amina, souris-moi.
J'arrive pas.
T'es magnifique.
So the real doctor, Ghada Hatem, actually founded the Maison des Femmes. Was she on board with the idea of being made into a character for this film?
Not at all.
Okay.
She was initially quite reluctant, but she agreed on one condition. The character inspired by her had to be clearly fictional. So the film doesn't aim to recreate reality in a documentary way. For example, the production chose not to shoot in the Maison des Femmes, and they also made a very strong narrative choice about what not to show. So we never see acts of violence on screen because the director didn't want it to become aesthetic material.
Okay. And this is also, of course, very much an ensemble piece led by French actress Karine Viard. Let's hear what she had to say about her character during an interview with our sister show, À l'affiche.
In these environments, you're dealing with the human condition. And there's the sublime, there's the tragic, there's also the deep joy of being alive, and there's the deep joy of being able to survive. Paradoxically, the place where there is a lot of suffering is also the place where there can be a lot of life, especially when it comes to rebuilding one's life.
And Manon, you said you were particularly moved by this film.
I really was, because the film avoids sensationalism. It doesn't exploit suffering on screen, and it really highlights solidarity instead. And the energy that Karine Viard brings truly gives the film its pulse. She is a commanding actress in France who could be compared to Laura Dern for international viewers. And she's mostly known abroad for films like La Famille Bélier, which inspired the American remake Coda.
Which was hugely successful. Yeah, an important, shining a light on an important initiative, La Maison des Femmes there. Well, finally, to a comedy now, Alter Ego. The premise of this one is quite simple and slightly terrifying. Alex finds that he has a new neighbour who is his exact lookalike, only a better version. Tell us about this one.
Yeah, it starts with a playful idea, a bald man meeting a superior version of himself with a perfect blow dry.
Nightmare.
But it quickly turns into something much darker, because the twist is that no one else sees the resemblance. So we as spectators are constantly wondering whether Alex is losing his mind. And the idea isn't just meeting your double, it's meeting a better version of yourself. The one who looks more handsome, who performs better, who even seems happier. So it's about that constant feeling that the grass is greener next door, which feels pretty relatable at the age of social media.
Absolutely. And I guess in this film, everything rests on that main actor, Laurent Lafitte, who plays both Axel and Alex.
Yes, Laurent Lafitte, who just won the César Award for his part in his previous film, The Richest Woman in the World. Here he had to create two distinct characters, Alex, who is insecure, and Axel, who is confident. And the film avoids any flashy digital tricks. The directors chose a very simple mise-en-scène so that the performance could carry everything. And the film explores male insecurities and the pressure to perform professionally, socially, even physically. And it's cruel at times, but that cruelty is part of the humor. And honestly, it's quite refreshing at a time when genuinely sharp, well-crafted French comedies are becoming increasingly rare.
Sounds like an excellent tip and some welcome comic relief. Thank you so much, Manon, for the roundup this week. We'll leave you with a final look at Alter Ego, starring Laurent Lafitte and Laurent Lafitte. Do join us next time here on Arts 24 for more movies, arts and culture. There's more news coming up just after this.
Bonjour, je suis Axel, votre nouveau voisin. Ouais, mais là, ça va... Non, c'est... Ça va pas être possible, ça. Tu vois le voisin derrière? C'est dingue, non?
Ah, il ressemble à quelqu'un? Julien Courbet, c'est ça?
Enfin, Nathalie, ce mec, c'est mon sosie parfait, mais avec des cheveux.